Hi all! Everything in my video is pulled from the public domain, and I am using them under the Fair Use, Fair Dealings guidelines. Everything I say is my own opinion. You should look into this information for yourselves, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Morning, everybody! All right, listen, we have a bunch of stories today, but the big thing for me is going to be at the end, because there was an interview on GB News with a sugar, which just shows how diluted some of these people are. So you're definitely going to want to stay on here and watch this, okay? So let's just jump in and get there. Let's go. All right, we're going to start off with Sophie. Now, I told you yesterday that she went to the Driftfield show, but you know how I feel. When more pictures come out, I tend to show them. So here we go. So to start with, besides showing off her great taste in clothing, and I love that clutch purse that she's holding, she met up with some school children and she made pizza while learning about where food comes from. She presented some livestock trophies that had been won. I think that's very lovely. She had a few drinks of different stuff there. But the big thing that got me is look at her face here. There's something about what's going on with these pigs. She cannot control herself. She is laughing, belly laughing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look at her. She can barely breathe. She's laughing so hard. I don't know what was going on there, but, you know, she could have fun anywhere. Now, just in case I didn't tell you yesterday, this is the agricultural show in Yorkshire, which is one of the country's most prominent agricultural shows. Now, some other things that went on while she was there. She apparently saw an entertaining dog show. Apparently, there was a horticulture section. There were dancing diggers. I can't even imagine what that is. We know that agriculture is one of Sophie's big things and getting children, involved in this. She is also patron of the Addington Fund, which is a charity that helps struggling farmers. Remember, she went to a dairy earlier on this year. She also helped some children with some artwork. She's very busy while still looking very stylish. And you guys know how much I like her. She also met contributors to the show, people, who bring their animals, their wool, that sort of thing. And of course, the flowers were just beyond gorgeous. All right, moving on. King Charles and Queen Camilla went to Wales. It's their first time going since the coronation in May. They started off at I hope I say all these names correctly, at the Brecon Cathedral. They were greeted by children from the local priory church in Wales. And then they met members of the community that were involved in the church. They met the first minister outside the cathedral. That cathedral, by the way, was built in the 12th century. Very nice. They went into the cathedral. This whole thing was for the centenary, anniversary. But they went in and they saw a performance by the Brecon Choir. Some other people, very nice. Now, it's pretty obvious from watching these pictures before they went into the cathedral that these children were uber excited to meet the king and the queen, which I think is lovely. They're getting some patriotic stuff into these kids. Very nice. Anyway, it looks like a beautiful, sorry, I'm tripping over my words, cathedral. And I'm glad that they're there to celebrate the centennial year of it. Very nice. I bet the acoustics in there were amazing. You guys know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know that they're singing and it's reverberating and at the high ceilings. And yeah, the acoustics were just amazing. Now, when that was over, they went to the Brecon Choir Festival. Excuse me. They met local community members, public people. They met, it's an annual show. They went around, they saw the livestock, they spoke to some of the stall holders, they got to sample some of the drinks, they met reps from the Black Mountains College, they spoke to people, and while they were doing that, the choir sang in the background. How nice is this? And at the end, King Charles was asked to add some soil to an oak sapling, which is later going to be replanted in the Brecon County Showground, which I think is super sweet. Is that an alpaca? Is that what you call those animals? I can't remember the name of them, but okay. Alpaca. Yeah. Anyway, they walked around. They looked like they had a great time. Now, at some point, they split off, and King Charles went to the barracks, the Brecon Barracks, and he met the mascot. Oh, I can't imagine. The barracks are the home to 160 brigade people who support the Prince of Wales during the recent pandemic, which I think is super nice. He met some of the soldiers, he met some of their families, and the Welsh military mascot, the Royal Welsh Goat, Lance Corporal Shenkin. They named the goat. All right. While this was going on, Queen Camilla met reps and people from one of the largest domestic abuse charities operating in Wales called Callan DVS. You know, it looks to me like Queen Camilla has finally come into her own. All right, moving on. All right, next up, I just want to touch on this. They're saying that Andrew's travel details from meetings from 10 years ago, because he spent 10 years as the UK's rep from 2001 to 2011, they're going to seal those records. That would have been, he was there for 11 years doing that job, and he's been out of that job for how many years? And why are they even bringing this up? This is the kind of stupid stuff to try to keep your eye. You know what I'm saying? Keep your eyes on the prize, people. All right, Harry and Meghan. The articles are coming out saying they feel unstable about their future prospects because they've had nothing but a string of failures. You know, Angela Levin has come out and said they have a long list of things that have gone wrong, from Spotify being cut to people on Spotify calling them grifters. They're saying their Netflix deal is a complete mess. They've only released 2 things, and one of them nobody's even talking about. Live to Lead. It's a project somebody else did that they purchased and put out under their name. Their life is a complete mess. One minute they're going to do things separately. The next minute it's Meghan's never needed him more than now. I mean, I agree. This is what all is in the press. It's a joke. All right, moving on. All right, let's move on to the spare. Apparently, it's being reported in places like Spain and Turkey. They are flooded. That's the word they used. Flooded with discarded copies of Prince Harry's book. Okay, people are just leaving them behind instead of lugging them back home. They're poolside, they're in receptions, they're in rooms, and they're even found in beachside bins. One British travel agency said they have so many copies of the book, they're at a loss of what to do with them because the libraries of the local bookstores refuse to take them. Wow. Now, people are saying originally they found it funny and they were returning the books, but now they're telling the hotels don't bother sending the books back to their owners because they said several of the hotels have been sending the books back and now they have bookcases full of them. So they've asked the hotels to stop sending them back. Otherwise, they said, we'll never get rid of them. Now, in the meantime, I'm still waiting for the official numbers on the book because remember, the numbers were based on the books that were sent to bookstores, etc., etc. But then a lot of the bookstores and places were left with these books that they couldn't get rid of and they couldn't sell. And if Harry didn't sign them, they could be returned for money back. So I'm still waiting on those numbers. All right, I just had to cover this before we get into the big thing. Apparently, after Meghan and Harry did the Oprah interview, remember, and then they sat down and they were doing spots for Spotify, and Meghan was wearing this ridiculously expensive dress. She supposedly was pregnant at the time, but of course there was no baby bump to be seen, flat stomach. Personally, I got to be honest, I didn't like the dress. It's not her. I just didn't like the dress. Anyway, apparently Jill Biden at some point also wore a dress that had lemons on it. It was not the same dress. It wasn't sheer. She also wore it multiple times, unlike Meghan, who only wears a dress once and then you never see it again. Anyway, as is typical with narcissists, she goes, oh, Jill wore that dress, so it was meant to be a show of support for me behind the scenes. So I'm going to send her a gift. And a thank you to Goo on Twitter for this. She sent her baskets of lemons. She probably claimed they were from her private garden. Like, are you serious? My goodness. Can you imagine being so self-absorbed that you believe that if anybody wears a dress that has any kind of embellishment on it that you had worn previously, that somehow it has something to do with you? Because that's essentially what this is. Uh-huh. All right, moving on. A big thank you to Kylie on Twitter for this picture. Everybody's talking about the fact that Harry and Meghan tried to get a ride home on Air Force One. And what did I tell you? If they had, they would have been papped, I'm sure. And a thank you to J.E. May on Twitter for this picture. Anyway, this discussion has continued on today. And Dan Wooten was on the news and he brought two people on. One person we've seen before, one person we haven't. She's a sugar. And I just want to show you how they twist things in their head to fit their narrative. So watch this.
Tonight, Harry and Meghan were denied a ride back to America with Joe Biden on US presidential plane Air Force One after the Queen's funeral last year. Their request was reportedly snubbed by the White House, laying bare the Sussexes' dwindling influence on the world stage. One connected source told the Daily Mail tonight it would have caused such a commotion, it would have strained relations with the palace and the new king. Months later, the pair were dumped from their £20 million Spotify deal and called grifters by a furious executive, fueling fears that the runaway royals are now sailing into worrying financial hardship. Chief of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Stewart, and the social commentator, supporter of Harry and Meghan, Joanna Jaju. So, Ingrid Stewart, this is really fascinating, isn't it? That it looks like Harry and Meghan thought that they could hitch a ride with Joe Biden back to the States after the late Queen's funeral. And because he didn't want to annoy the royal family and King Charles, it didn't happen.
Well, I think that it shows the degree of self-entitlement that Harry and Meghan have, because they were friends of the Bidens, and Mrs. Biden was a supporter of the Invictus Games because she is the mother of a veteran, and she had supported Harry for 2 or 3 years, and hopefully they were expecting them both to carry on supporting. But what Harry and Meghan failed to consider is the effect that it might have politically. How could the Bidens possibly ask them on Air Force One when they have so publicly snubbed their own family? And I think they thought it wouldn't be a good idea. I don't think it was done unkindly. I think they just thought, this is not a good idea. We don't want to come down on one side or the other. Let's just say no. And they didn't personally have to say no. The White House just said, no way.
Yeah, well, DailyMail.com, Joanna, reporting tonight that the request received an immediate no, with Biden staff recognising it was a bad idea, with a source telling the website it would have strained relations with the palace and the new king. So it really does feel like Harry and Meghan aren't winning the battle of influencing people in America.
Well, I mean, one thing that I've learned is that when stories like this are reported, usually it's the opposite of what actually happened, or there's massive holes in it. Like what was just alluded to, the Bidens are very friendly and familiar with Meghan and Harry, and especially Harry, you know, from years ago. And I don't doubt that maybe actually the real story is that they extended the gesture.
Now, the fact that she says that she believes Joe Biden reached out to them and offered them a trip on Air Force One just goes to show that this woman doesn't understand how Air Force One works. This is not the president's private plane where he can just invite anybody on board. You have to have security clearance and you have to pay. He pays for his children and his grandchildren when they fly on Air Force One. They pay for the reporters to fly on Air Force One. If anything, this shows me that they were having money problems even back when the Queen died.
But let's just take a second, actually, and, you know, take a step back and think about the context of when this supposedly happened. Harry had literally just come to Europe at the time to do his own personal engagements, as you can see now on the screen, with Meghan, and he ended up having to lay his grandmother, his beloved grandmother, to rest.
So this woman completely ignores the fact that the Queen asked Harry and Meghan to stop and see them, stop to see her before she died. Harry and Meghan knew she had bone cancer, and they said no. And then the Queen died. But this woman wants everybody to believe that that was his beloved grandmother. He loved her so much. If he loved her so much, he would have stopped in and seen her before she passed away.
So the fact and the idea that he would be trying to scrounge a lift off Joe Biden at this stage, or would his priority realistically be going back to his kids after having to go through all this trauma of going to the funeral, all the trauma of all the media spotlight that was on the couple for that week? I think the priority was probably getting a commercial flight straight to California back to their children rather than making a detour on Air Force One just to say that they hitched a lift with the president and the first lady.
So these are the kind of sugars that I'm talking about. They wouldn't want to go on Air Force One. Their priority was their children. But they had been away from their children at that point for 3 weeks. They could have flown the children over to the UK. They still had Frogmore Cottage, but they didn't. They left the children in California. And suddenly it's a priority. We got to get to the kids. This is what I'm talking about with these sugars. It's like they just want to ignore the facts and they live in their own dream world.
This doesn't sound realistic to me at all.
Okay. Ingrid Stewart, overall, has Megxit been a failure, given this New York Post reporting that the couple are in financial dire straits, and actually now it sounds like they're deeply unhappy?
I don't necessarily think they're deeply unhappy, because this is what they wanted. They wanted a life in America. They wanted to get out of the royal family. But I think things must be very difficult, and I think that there's so many rumours going around, and I totally agree with the other lady that, you don't necessarily have to believe everything, but you have to apply logic to it. Obviously, they have a very expensive lifestyle. Obviously, things haven't gone well for them. Harry still has 6 court cases pending, which is pretty unpleasant for anyone. And I just feel that they're fighting the world. And I don't think that's a happy situation to be in. And I don't actually think, yes, in answer to your question, I don't think Megxit has been the success that they hoped it would be.
Joanna Jaju, do you disagree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a massive success. Obviously, there's been bumps in the road, and they haven't been short of people who have definitely tried to sabotage them on their journey to freedom, for sure. But, they have had every project that they've touched basically has turned to gold, Meghan and Harry, since they've left the royal family.
They've had people along the way that have tried to sabotage them, but everything they've touched has turned to gold. They had their Archetypes podcast canceled. They've been called grifters. The Dior deal blew up as soon as it was leaked. The South Park episode, no Emmy nomination. Meghan tried to get on the Emmy voting board. She was told no. She tried to become the head of the tennis organization because Catherine does it in the UK. She was told no. Not everything they touch turns to gold. Harry's book has been made fun of on the Jimmy Kimmel show. Remember the book? Remember? I'm not even going to go there. The two of them have failed. The world is sick of them. And this girl's like, oh, people are just trying to sabotage them on their way. Oh, it's all gold. These people are nuts, I'm telling you.
Meghan's podcast was #1 and beat John Rogan.
Again, ignoring the facts, she did not beat Joe Rogan. We found out later on that Spotify was fudging the numbers to make it look like her podcast was so good. And come to find out it wasn't, and that's why it got canceled.
Joe Rogan, sorry.
Not for long, it
Netflix
didn't.
documentary was the biggest debut. Joe Rogan, sorry.
Yeah.
Their Netflix debut was the biggest documentary debut on there. And they literally, everything that they touch turns to gold. And people are just bitter, basically, that they've been able to go out there, make their own life, and all of this pretending as if, Meghan and Harry are running out of money. How could they possibly
I don't think they're bitter. I really don't think they're bitter. I think what they've done is they've traded on the royal family name. They haven't traded on them, Meghan and Harry. They've traded on the royal family. And I don't think people are bitter about them. I just think they say, why have this couple spent all this time and effort and energy escaping only to trade in what they escaped from?
Well, look, spirited debate,
not
both sides of the
necessarily.
argument,
I think
as
to begin with.
always on GB News. Final word, Joanna?
I just think that they wanted to clear the air and, move on from the royal family.
Am I missing something? Didn't they clear the air with the Oprah interview? Didn't they clear the air with the Cut interview? Didn't they clear the air with the Netflix docuseries? Didn't they clear the air with Harry's book? How many times are they going to clear the air before they move on? I mean, we all know they've got nothing else. They're making their money off the royal family. The one place they escaped from, I think Dan Wooten said it perfectly.
And tell their story and rectify it for the record. That's it.
Fair enough, Joanna Jaju, Ingrid Stewart.
All right, you guys. As you can see, God provided a absolutely gorgeous sky to me today. I just had to snap this photo. It's almost like he was like beaming down on our property. All right, don't forget to leave those comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell. If you've already hit it, double check, make sure you're still subscribed. Don't forget to go up into the description box and you'll find the links to my Twitter, my Getter, my Rumble, my email, and my physical address in case there's something you want to send. For those of you who've donated to my coffee fund or through the thanks button, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.